And we're back. We have a very special guest, Shane.
Very special. It doesn't get any more special than this, in my opinion. We've been trying to get this one for a while, too.
Vice President of Supercross, Dave Prater, joining us.
What's happening, guys? Happy to be here. It was a light week, so I'm sure we were like, hey, let's we'll fill him in.
We're the first podcast to get you this week, though, huh? Nobody's done it yet?
Yeah, no, it's good. Just landed in Charlotte, so happy to be here. Excited about this weekend. Should be fun.
Turn that mic just a touch. We'll be dialed. Yeah, there we go. I know you don't do many podcasts. You know, this is kind of an exclusive deal.
It is. I know.
We've been trying to line this up for you. Were like one of the first guests I wanted on the podcast when we started it in Salt Lake last year.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. I was there. I was waiting, and I came to A1. We are going to do it there. No, it's tough. I know schedules and everything were crazy. But
Shane's fault.
No,
he's way too
100%.
busy.
This guy, when he's racing, you know, it's hard to get him planted. But now we're good.
Yeah.
How has it been? How's it been getting ready for SMX? I imagine the weeks leading up to it have to be insane.
They're insane, but it's been good. It's interesting. Like you would think last year, with it being the inaugural year, that would have been the craziest one. But I think this year was actually a little more insane. So, but it's been good. It's just trying to. Last year we had the benefit of it being the first time, so we caught people off guard. And this year, trying to figure out how we do that again has been a challenge. But no, it's been great, and we've got an amazing team that second to none, and they handle it all. So it's been fun. Looking forward to this weekend.
How did you guys get connected with Marcus SMI? Because I know we went to Atlanta obviously after leaving Mercedes-Benz, but like how did that happen?
That was really it, just through Atlanta. So we have a department that has stadium contracts or connections all over the country and the world, really. And when Atlanta we were having issues with the stadium, we wanted to be in Atlanta and reached out to Marcus and the team, and that's how it kind of started, and it just grew from there. And they're great to work with. They're awesome. Obviously, we're here in Charlotte, in Texas, and Vegas, so all three venues are Smith venues, so it's cool.
You don't have to give me a direct answer here. I'm just going to go right into it. What's the price difference between something like where we're at now at Drag Strip and say Angel Stadium or Atlanta, anything like that? Is it pretty substantial? Obviously, you don't have to give me the numbers.
No, it's not substantial. These venues aren't inexpensive when you come in, and you would think about it like we're here for the weekend, like we have a race on the weekend. But because it takes so much to build a Supercross, or in this case an SMX track, we have to rent it for a week. So not only do you have to find the window where they don't have something else coming in, but you have to rent it for a week. So Monday through Sunday. And that's really the challenge, is finding those windows. 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't a big deal. There weren't as many events going on, but nowadays it's crazy. Like you go to Seattle, and believe it or not, Seattle has events booked in that stadium almost year round, because they're outside of the Seahawks, their next largest tenant is Amazon. They do a bunch of Amazon events in that stadium. So just things you wouldn't think of that create a challenge. But as far as price, you'd be surprised, but there's not much difference in the overall price of like a Charlotte Motor Speedway compared to AT&T Stadium.
And how long do you have to rent it for? Is it a full week? Because I know they bring the dirt in early.
Yeah, typically it's full week. For SMX, it's 10 days, just because there's so much more dirt. Wow. And we go, outside of the stadium really, so the cleanup takes a little bit longer. But for Supercross, for instance, it's 10 days. Or 7 days, sorry, here 10 days.
Speaking of the track, something that I've always kind of wondered about is, what is your kind of relationship like with Dirtworks? Like, how is there a general, we know this year everybody was talking about no Dragons bags, 9 whoops or whatever. Is there a general philosophy, kind of a general discussion that you guys have before the year starts, where it's like, we kind of want to go in this direction, like we want the tracks to be a little faster, a little more technical, and what goes into that?
Yeah, the relationship's good. So I'm I'm somewhat removed from the actual Dirtworks relationship now. Still love those guys. Work with them as far as on site, chatting about how things worked out and, you know, how we could be better. But Mike Mewey on our team, who's a senior director of operations, works hand in hand with Dirtworks. And really it's just we have a cadence. So as soon as the Supercross season is over, Mike and Bill Harris, who's our director of operations, will get together with Alex and the guys from Dirtworks and really talk about everything that we thought worked and everything that we thought didn't. And from there, they'll start just basically going into the stadiums that we know we're going to and creating the footprint of the track. No obstacles, just the actual how it's going to, you know, lay out in the stadium, lanes-wise. And then after that, they'll have another meeting. They'll get together, talk about obstacles. And then typically, Mike and the team go out to recently retired guys. So AC pretty soon. I don't know if he's reached out yet, but if not, be ready for his phone call. But he's going to come out and he'll ask, you know, it used to be Stu and Ricky and Chad and those guys, but just getting their feedback on, hey, what do you think about this?
I'm going to say the whoops need to be 10 times bigger, 10 times longer, more dragons backs, more 4 onto the tables like LASMX last year. Now that I'm not racing, sick. I just want to see all out.
That's the challenge, though, because you can't go to, obviously, riders who are currently competing because it's all self-interest. Like, they want the track built, so it gives them an advantage. But it's interesting talking to guys after they retire and how they differ in opinion from when they were racing, for sure.
How much do you take in for that, though? Because I see guys on track walk being like, oh, no, that's ridiculous. Why'd they put that there? And then they go complain to Mike or whoever. Like, how much of that do you take as, like, seriousness versus them trying to get what they want?
That's tough. That's the toughest part about it. And like I said, I've been removed from it for a while, but I think, you know, Mike and Mike Pelletier with the AMA and Dirtworks do a good job. And you kind of get a feeling if enough guys are mentioning the same thing, then it's a problem. You know, if there's a few that are pretty outspoken about it, then Mike and Alex will go and actually go ask the other athletes and say, hey, what do you think? And it's really try to go with the majority, obviously, the consensus. But for the most part, you know, when you get 5 or 6 guys coming up and all having the same issue, that we need to change something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my last couple of years with my whole nerve injury with my arm, every time I had a press day or something, I'd scope the whoops out and I'd have to pull Corey or somebody to the side and be like, man, we need to roll through these things. Like, those are whoops. I was just praying those things were jumpers. But yeah, that'll be cool to have a little, I don't know, maybe have a little bit of pull in terms of what you guys are going to go with next year.
Yeah, I would expect his call. Like I said, he reaches out. He'll reach out over probably October, November.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna put you on it. Just forgive me in advance. Put you on the spot. So last year, and it sounds like this is, you know, this is not your specific role, but maybe you could give us some insight on it. We had no dragons backs. And we had the 9 whoop rule, which I'm always on social media checking that out. And a lot of people were like, you know, bring them back, make the whoops longer, do this, do that. Do you have any insight into how that decision was made?
Yeah, I think, the insight was just the data from the crashes. And if you go back and watch film from 2023 and you look at the 10th, 11th whoop, that was when majority of the crashes and the bad crashes happened. Because you can only hold the front end, and the front end was tucking about 10 or 11 whoops in. So we just made the decision we're going to try 9 and see how it works out. And it worked pretty well this year. We had Kenny, who had the one bad get off in Nashville, but that was a mechanical.
Freak deal.
Yeah.
And I think Martin was the only guy in Detroit that had a bad crash in the whoops this year. So, again, it's hard to say with just 1 year's worth of data and 17 races, but it seemed to have worked. Now, we're getting lobbied from riders and the OEMs right now about, hey, let's go to 10, let's go to 11. I don't want to say we won't, but we're definitely discussing it. But again, it's such a delicate balance because you want to challenge these guys. They're the best in the world, but you also want to keep them safe.
Yeah, keep them on the track,
exactly,
right?
On the track and competing. So it's a tough one, and it's going to continue to be controversial, I think, no matter what we do. If we go 10, they'll want to go 11.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I think you talk about social media, or just, I kind of pay attention to what the fans are talking about and just kind of the general vibe. And I think a lot of the times with those decisions, a lot of people will just assume they were made on a whim. Yeah. They're like, with no data, like you said, there was data to support this. I'm sure this was a lot of meetings, a lot of talks about this to make this decision, and
a lot of meetings, like you said, so we have the OEM steering committee, which is it's the SMX steering committee. It's made up of representatives from Feld, the execs from the OEMs, the race teams, the OEMs, MX Sports, AMA Pro, and we discussed this at length, probably over 2 or 3 months, and that we all made the decision. That's what we're going to do. No dragon backs in 24, and we're going to limit the whoops to 9.
I was a fan of no dragons backs. Those things have put me on the concrete more times than I can count, Dave.
I'm with you, man. I look, I love it. I love them. I love the challenge. But again, is it worth the risk? You just have to weigh it.
I just had a poll on my Instagram today. Actually, I was asking people if they would rather watch a race with a more technical track, which separates the riders more, or a less technical track in closer racing. And kind of from the information I've got, majority want the closer racing. But I think the hardcore fans, the guys that are out there riding a couple days a week, that see a crazy quad or an insane whoop section or dragon's back, and they can relate to just how hard that is. I find that the very hardcore fan wants it to be as technical as possible. It's always like, oh, back in 2002, it was this way or that way, right? But it feels like the majority of the fan base wants closer racing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the other thing that goes into it, is not only talking to the OEMs and the race teams and the athletes, but talking to our fans. And we survey our fans all year round, and you're 100% right. When it comes to technical versus closer racing, the vast majority want closer racing. And I agree with you. I'm nowhere close. I'd come out here and roll around this track, but it's still impressive. It's super impressive when you see someone break something out that's just like, wow, didn't even see it coming. But again, risk versus reward, and I'd rather have these guys on the racetrack, 17 events, healthy, and competing, rather than one obstacle that only 1 or 2 guys can do, and it's catastrophic if they don't.
That said, in 2023, Denver, my last, I think that was my last professional podium.
Yeah, it
was brought to you by people crashing out. Basically, there was half the field was on the couch. So I'm glad the 9 whoop rule didn't come into effect until 2024.
Well, see, there are benefits to it, but yeah, I'm not sure they benefit everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, something I don't know, something that I wanted to ask. Like you've heard stories of, you can't come to the riders a lot of the time. Like, we can all collectively say, oh, this obstacle isn't safe, and we will have some pull that way. You guys try to listen. Like, riders, I can, like I said, come off the track press day and have conversations with the guys of, what the Dirtworks guys and you guys of what you guys are thinking, and bounce stuff off of. But majority of it, you guys work pretty closely with the teams, right? And I think sometimes people think that one team has a little bit more pull than the other team. Like,
which team is that?
Huh?
Which team is that?
I don't know. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But what is that relationship like? Do you try to, have you try to have an equal amount of conversations with everybody in the paddock?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because there are really no. I've heard that before from folks. There are no favorites, simply because there can't be. You've got to be. What's the word? agnostic, I guess. But
I like that word. That's a good one.
There you go. Most of the teams come to us quite often. Some of the teams come to us every week, every other day. We've got great relationships with all of them. So I think if there was any kind of favoritism, they would call us out on it for sure. But it's a constant conversation for 9 months plus, because even during the off season, we're having conversations about the next season and how we can make it better.
I don't know how you deal with it. Like, I can only imagine the phone calls that you get during the week of just people complaining or wanting something. Like, it's got to be.
Do you have social media? Do you go on social media? You try to stay off it.
I try to stay off of it. I never read comments. I stopped that years ago.
Good.
Good. But yeah, I do have it. I honestly probably wouldn't have social media, not for the reasons of just, comments and negativity, but just it's such a time suck, and I'd love to get away from it, but that's where everyone's attention is.
He sends me video ideas
marketing,
all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why I hired this guy's company to do my social media the last couple of years, because I was over it.
Oh, I'm with you. And don't get me wrong. Social media can be a great thing. It can be a terrible thing. But because everyone's attention is on social media now, that's your biggest marketing tool. So I'm on it for those reasons, and seeing what we're doing, seeing what Shane's doing with SuperMotocross and Supercross Live, and now Pro Motocross. So I do look at it, but I definitely don't read the comments.
I used to give Shane crap because when I was hottest, when I was getting all the views on social my first year in the 450 class, I felt like if I stubbed my toe in an alley somewhere, this guy would have it on film and post it on the Supercross Live account. So I had a bunch of people around me at that time where I was like, who's running this Supercross Live Instagram account? They have it out for me, man.
He's pretty good.
Hey, man, we just post what happens, man. I can't control what happens on the track.
Oh man, switching gears a little bit. What's the biggest thing kind of behind the scenes? How long have you been doing this?
24 years.
24 years. What's, from your side of things, what has changed? What has changed the most?
Probably two things off the top of my head is just the skill level of the athletes. Like, as fast as everyone was in early 2000. 1, 2, 3. I think people would be shocked if we could bring those guys back in their prime, the Rickies, the McGraths, those guys, and put them up against, excuse me, these guys. Let's start.
It's a slippery slope when you talk about, because you always want to respect the guys that came before, and without them, the sport wouldn't have progressed until now, right? But just like you say the same thing about golf, if you put Tiger Woods in his prime against today's field versus a 1999 field, he's just not going to win as often.
Yeah, the game has just changed.
It's changed.
It's changed. Not only that, and I'm no disrespect for those guys. McGrath's
of course,
the king,
no,
Ricky's the GOAT. But they had the equipment is night and day from back then. So who knows if they were in their prime on today's equipment? Who knows what would happen? But I think that's the biggest thing is the equipment has progressed so much over the last 24 years, and even if the skill level is the same, athletes can just go so much faster now and do things that there was no way they could do 10, 15 years ago.
Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and I think I hear a lot about, the tracks used to be this, or the racing used to be more exciting. But if you look back to that era, and that's what I grew up watching, so I have the nostalgia too. We all respect it, right? But the gap between like Chad, Ricky, and James, those guys could crash in the first turn and get third pretty much every time, right? And now, just with how much information is out there with social media, everybody knows the training program. Like pretty much everybody in the paddock knows what Ricky was doing in 2002. There's so much information now, and with 6-year-olds in training facilities and stuff, it just has risen.
It's like anything else. It just progressed, and that's, again, it starts with the motorcycle, but the training, the information that's available, like you said, It's all gotten better. And those guys, I'm with you. Like, I look back and think about guys I loved growing up, like Rick Johnson and Jeff Ward and those guys, and they were incredible. And if they were today, if we put them on the track this weekend in their prime on today's motorcycles, probably be just as fast. But it was just a different era, and you can't. It's like trying to argue LeBron or MJ.
Yeah.
You're never gonna. No, we'll never know. We'll never know.
To that point, a nostalgia point, what would you say to somebody that says dirt bike supercross was more popular in 2000?
I would say we'll get the stats out.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah, we definitely weren't. Depending on the region, you know, it's Southern California versus the Southeast versus the Midwest. I think it ebbs and flows, but it's definitely, as far as the number of fans coming to the events and the number of people watching on television, the fact that we even have live television, you know, 10 years ago we didn't. So yeah, I'd break out the stats and say, here it is, black and white.
Where'd you get your start at? Like what year did you start doing this, and how'd you find yourself here?
I started in 2000. I, like so many people, I went to college, graduated with a sport administration degree, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And somebody asked me that question. They were like, well, what would you do if money wasn't an object? And I said, I don't know. I've always loved supercross and motocross, so maybe. So
you were a fan?
Oh yeah, I grew up racing. I'm talking amateur, like local track amateur stuff. But I was a fan, and I just loved it. I loved it growing up, and so Pace Motorsport had an offer for an intern, and I was a little late. They had just hired the intern, and so when I made the call, they said, hey, we have an opening in Monster Jam. And I was like, Monster Jam? I said, all right, I'll take the interview. And anyway, went to Sunrise, Florida for my interview with Monster Jam, got that job with the understanding that Supercross was where my heart was. So as soon as that opened up, I'd like to go work for that division. And a year later it happened, and started working as the tour manager for Supercross in 2000. So,
dang. So you've seen a lot of stuff change. Like when the switch went from 2-stroke to 4-stroke, what was that? Like, I guess what position were you in at that point? Like, and how did that happen?
2006
on the sport side of it, like on the inside.
I was a director of operations, and it was I don't know. I think, you know, we didn't really know what was going to happen. You know the story. I think Davey told you guys, but Yamaha had petitioned to get the 1-year exemption, and AMA
it's a 426,
yeah,
right?
426. Yeah. AMA allowed it, and then just quickly over, you know, a span of like 5 years, we went from all 2 strokes to all 4 strokes. Yeah, so again, nostalgia is a great thing. Like, love 2 strokes, love the sound. That's what I grew up with. But again, you look at those bikes compared to what we're racing now, and it's they're not even close. Speaking
of bikes, we've recently kind of had an influx of electric dirt bikes manufacturers coming onto the scene. What's your thoughts on that? And do you ever, of course, we're just, you know, guessing here, but do you ever see that being any part of what we're doing now?
Maybe. It's hard to predict the future. I can tell you just personally, I love electric. I still love gas powered. I love the fact that we're not racing electric yet. But I think we've got to be cognizant of it, obviously, and listen to the OEMs. And that's really what we've told the OEMs along with MX Sports, that, look, we have no intention of racing electric until you're ready, until you say we need to race electric. And thus far, they're not ready. So it's going to be interesting, though. I think the benefit that I see right now for electric is you get more kids on dirt bikes because you can ride them out in the suburbs and not disturb the neighbors. And just like I did when I was a kid on my KX80, you know. So that's the benefit to me, and the maintenance is a lot less. So parents don't have to, you know, maintain a gas-powered motorcycle. So that's a huge benefit. I think we're going to see more kids racing because of electric, but I don't know when or if, but we're just going to follow the OEM's lead, and when they say they're ready to do it, then we'll go that way.
Do you think like F1 made a whole new series for their, you know, whatever they call it, Formula E? Would that be the easier route, you think, to try something like that?
Potentially, or, you know, doing a whole new series along with Supercross and Motocross. So I don't know, I'm just shooting from the hip, but a Friday night, you know, Friday night
like
series, exhibition where we race electric, and then Saturday is traditional Supercross and Motocross.
There's been, speaking of F1, there's been a lot of talk maybe the last couple years. My agent, Steve Aspen, is always going on podcasts talking about like everybody's on the Drive to Survive Formula One thing right now. Could you ever, has there been any movement behind the scenes with making something like that happen? And do you see that being something that happens in the future?
Yeah, I think there's been quite a bit of movement. We've worked on it for a while. Drive to Survive kind of was lightning in a bottle, and they hit right at the perfect time when the world was shutting down with COVID and everyone was home, and all they had to do was watch Netflix. And so it's obviously an incredible show, but they hit on a perfect time for them to capture that audience. So everyone says Drive to Survive. I think we have to differentiate ourselves from that. I think people have tried to do just
they have the tennis one,
right.
Breakpoint.
You did it before Drive to Survive.
Yeah, we did it before Drive to Survive. We did like 8 episodes on CBS over 2 years, and we're currently working on something right now. So just pushing as hard as we can to get something together, because it will benefit the sport. I don't know how much, but it definitely will benefit the sport. And I think we have to do a better job introducing the world to our athletes and the personalities and the humans behind the racing, because that's how you're going to grow the fan base. Is if you've never ridden a motorcycle, and you come to a live event, it's spectacular, but humans connect to humans. So I think that's the next step in really growing the fan base outside of the endemic fan or someone who's ridden growing up. So, and that's we're close. We've been working on it for quite a while, and I think we're close.
How much does something like that cost? Because I heard NASCAR spent $5 million on like their 5-episode series. Is that accurate?
It's expensive. Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate. That's
Wow.
probably accurate, and it depends on the models changing. The platforms used to pay for everything. Now it's not so much.
So now
that.
you got to basically pay to produce it and then pay Netflix to put it on there?
It depends on Netflix models somewhat that way. It depends on the platform, but the models are all different, but they are changing where in the past it was like, look, we just want the content. We will pay for the production, pay for everything. That model is right now currently is no longer in existence. So
because there's just too much, probably, right? There's too much coming in.
Just too much, and I think those platforms have seen the incredible success of Drive to Survive and some other things, and the platform F1, the production company. There's one of those is making a ton of money, and the others. I would argue they're making their money on the other side of things. They're getting more fans. People are buying more F1 merch. They're coming to events. They're watching more F1 on television. So
when you do something like that, when you have that idea and you'll have this meeting of like, hey, we should do this, but it's going to cost X amount of dollars, who like okays that? Like, is that something that like Kenneth is pretty involved in, or is that something that like you guys as the leadership group of Supercross can be like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do this?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. So Kenneth is extremely involved with the executive team. So it would be something like that would be a mutual decision. But yeah, Kenneth would be the guy who ultimately, Kenneth and or Juliet, who ultimately say, let's do it.
I think, and I want to get your perspective on this, but you have all the numbers and the stats to back it up. But like I said, I've seen nothing but, I went pro in 2013, and, we had some great personalities. We had James still racing and Chad and all those guys, RV. But I've seen the sport, continue to get more popular. I get, especially in Southern California, I can't go into Target without somebody saying hi to me. And I'm like, I was like a 10th place guy the last 2 years. So I'm like, from my perspective, when you say the term mainstream, it's pretty loose term, right? It's kind of hard to be football or baseball or, these things that have been around 200 years. But can you see these guys like Jet Lawrence, Chase Sexton being household names?
For sure. I think one of the things you asked me a minute ago was the two things. I think the second thing I've seen as far as how the sport has changed is social media, and in a good way, because you've got access not only to, Supercross, motocross, but everything. Fans have more access to their heroes and the sport than ever before. So I think that has done a lot to grow it. I definitely think it could be mainstream. Mainstream's it's hard to define. What is mainstream? Everyone's got a different definition, I think. But I really think the way to do it is to keep growing the base. And the more people that you can get racing dirt bikes at a younger age and introduce them to the sport, the more of a base we're going to grow. I mean, the challenge is the barrier to entry. Football, basketball, baseball, for the most part, to start, you gotta get a ball. You gotta buy a football, basketball,
very cheap,
a baseball, or a bat. Racing dirt bikes is a little different story. So again, back to the electric thing. I think there's an opportunity with electric motorcycles and electric bicycles to really introduce people at a younger age and introduce a lot more people to the sport and continue to push that and grow that. So, yeah, I do. I think, that's the goal, is to make this mainstream, whatever that definition ends up being. But the goal is always to grow the sport and make it bigger and better every year. So if I didn't believe it would ever be, quote, mainstream, I probably
wouldn't be vice president.
I probably should retire. Yeah. So that's the goal, and I do believe we can be mainstream one day, and hopefully soon.
One last question. I'm just going to put you on the spot again. Where do you see it in 5 years, 10 years? Where do you see the most room for growth and change, and what's in our vice president's noggin?
I think we've kind of touched on some of it. I think there's real opportunity to expand the grassroots of this sport, and MX Sports is unbelievable. They're genius and experts at that part of it. So e-bikes and electric motorcycles, getting more kids racing at a younger age. I think that's a real opportunity that we'll see over the next 5 years really expand. I think media rights, I think the more people that come into the sport, and we've seen it just over the last 2 years with the with SuperMotocross World Championship and motocross and supercross coming together in this playoff that we all created. I think you've seen the number of eyeballs and the number of people that are watching, not only on network but on Peacock, growing. So I think there are real opportunities as far as media rights coming up over the next 2 or 3 years, and international growth as far as the amount of people that are watching SMX around the world. It's been amazing. We're 30% year over year for 5 years in growth. And so I think that's another huge opportunity.
Will we have any races, you think, overseas?
Who knows, AC? Maybe.
Hey,
you know what? Like I said, if we were thinking small, then we all might as well just pack up and go home. So definitely the sky's the limit. And I think obviously there are a lot of challenges with going overseas, but if the fan base is there, why not?
I will say, Dave, that I am on board, and I am going to do my best to get the riders' salaries public. How do you feel about that? Are we gonna be squaring up?
No, I think we should. You know, I don't.
People
think,
like money.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
They do, and I, full disclosure, like I've started talking to the OEMs over the past couple of years about it, because I don't think it's something we need to be embarrassed about. Like, these guys are making,
it's a lot of money.
The top guys are making a lot of money and very good salaries. So
more than people would expect, I think.
Sure.
Like a casual fan.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can tell you, people who don't know what I do, and once we get into the discussion, and the thing that blows them away is how much money that our top guys can make every time. So, and again, I think it's not that it's the only thing, but like I said, all these kids that, you know, want to be in the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NBA, part of that's aspirational too. They want to be those guys that are making those mega $1 million contracts. So why not start going, hey, look, you can make real money racing SMX.
I love it.
And that gives them something to aspire to.
How do we do that, though? Is it the teams or the riders?
I mean, it's probably going to have to be both, but I think the teams are really, the OEMs are the ones that have the say.
Yeah, I mean, once you get the salary, it's hard once the salaries are public, because then you get more of a, you know, the market better, and, you know, teams are going to end up paying more. Yeah, I mean, that's just it, really. I mean, but yeah, going back to what you just said, I cannot tell you how many times I have told, when somebody asks me what I do, I say I race dirt bikes, and then they say, "What do you do for a job?" And I'm like, "No, you don't get it."
Oh my god!
Like, I'm 27, I'm golfing as much as I want.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like it's been as much as we talk about money and growth, and with SMX, the big payout and everything, like, you can create an amazing life for yourself through this sport.
100%. And I think it goes back to what we've been talking about. The more we can grow this sport and the more we can increase the fan base, the more these guys are going to make, the more everyone's going to make. So high tide lifts all ships, and that's the goal. Well,
Dave, I am so happy to have had you on. I'm glad you're at the head of our ship. I'm glad you're steering it. I think we're going in a great direction. I'm excited doing a little race day live this weekend. I feel kind of a responsibility to the sport that has given me such a good life of trying to give back and trying to, do what I can to, continue to grow the sport. So we're on the same team, and yeah, I couldn't be more stoked about where we're going. So
awesome,
thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you guys. And yeah, I'm excited to hear you. Race day live is going to be fun, man. Everyone's got to tune in. It's going to be good.